The Raptors beat the Indiana Pacers again. Scottie Barnes puts up a career high and RJ Barrett dominates. Let's go to the film room. Scottie Barnes put up a career high 35 points, and he did it on an efficient night, mainly because he was also shooting the ball well. Early in the clock here, settles into a pull-up jumper. Over the last 3 games, Scottie is knocking down 40% of his threes, and he looked comfortable getting to his spots as well, settling into those mid-range jumpers. One thing that's interesting about Scottie and his process throughout games since returning back from injury, and what I've noticed, is that earlier on in games, he'll try to set the tone with some jumpers, and then later progress into getting downhill. Maybe it's a way for him to test out the defense before he actually engages and tries to get downhill, or maybe it's a way for him to get in rhythm. Either way, I've noticed that he's been trying to take more jump shots in the first half and then activate the downhill game in the second half. That happened tonight against Indiana. Really enjoyed the pick and roll game with him and Jakob Poeltl in this one as well. I thought for the most part, because Indiana played in a drop coverage, they were able to exploit that pretty easily. Scottie and Jakob in drop coverage is pretty much just barbecue chicken for them on defense. It either gives Scottie a downhill drive or it gives, a passing lane for Jakob to finish in that short mid-range area. You can see the confidence he has in that three-point shot as well. Early clock, off a turnover, settles into that shot. And look, while you might not agree that that is the shot you want this dominant big guy who can bulldoze anybody to take, it seems like it's a development path that he wants to focus on. So in a season of development, let's see what he can do with it. Going back to that jumper here, just really, forcefully trying to get to that mid-range area and see what he can do. That continued in the second half, gets the switch onto Pascal, settles into this nice mid-range fadeaway jump shot. That was pretty. And you can see he's starting to feel a rhythm for this stuff, but it didn't stop him from trying to get downhill. And one thing that Scottie needs to work on is how wide his drives are. Watch Andrew Nembhard here really stop him from getting to the rim. And so Scottie has to have this wide drive that ends up in a lefty hook. That changes depending on the matchup. And you'll see it in this possession where he actually snakes the pick and roll, gets downhill, and finishes over Miles Turner. It depends on how the defense is playing him, but if there is a guy who's stronger or can stonewall him or cannot allow him to get that straight line drive, he has to figure out a way to either burst through or power through. And I thought he did that as this game progressed. This is one of those things that I was mentioning. His ball handling has gotten better, and so teams are going to try to press him on that. But great job getting all the way downhill and finishing. And again, the three-point shot has been hitting. Off the catch. Boom. Still embracing the physicality inside. Gets in the post. One dribble. Shoulder. Finish. Again, in transition here. Jumper looks smooth off the catch. And he just kept flowing from there. Off the catch, good. Defense is setting up for a pick and roll. He just rejects, gets downhill, blows by, uses the contact, and one. Now the defense is really aggressive on these pick and rolls. They're actually stepping up a little bit. Great pass to Jakob for the finish. Love the physicality he uses in the pick and roll. And you see him trying to get downhill more often in the fourth quarter when Indiana was catching up. Boom. Nice shoulder to Pascal, finishes through. Really love this take two, even though he missed it. Nice spin in the pick and roll, just misses the layup, but then comes back, same idea, takes it all the way, nice little floater. And all that attention that he creates at the rim just creates a nice open pass to Jakob for the finish. And so Scottie Barnes had a really, really well-rounded game tonight. I mean, it was incredible to watch. 35 points. I didn't get to watch it live. I watched it afterwards. I watched the fourth quarter, but I got to, watch it in my own recap type of way. Shout out to League Pass for helping watch every single possession in just 45 minutes. Shout out to them for doing that. But yeah, got to rewatch this one. Didn't get to watch it with y'all live, but it was awesome to see Scottie process throughout this game. And for what it's worth, the Pacers are a bit of a mess right now, especially defensively, but the Raptors took full advantage of that. In the first half, they forced tons of turnovers. I thought Mobo did a great job. Jamal Shed did a great job defensively, especially in that first and second quarter, pushing the pace in transition. Mobo had that steal and finish. And I think the Raptors' MO from the get-go, defensively, this was a really, really good defensive game from the Raptors. Especially in that first half. It was to force turnovers and get out and running. And I wrote about this in my piece on RJ Barrett. The Raptors get out in transition much more at home than they do away from home. And that actually directly relates to their defense. Their defense is much better at home than it is away. And so, yeah, that's a young team quality to have. But it's interesting that it kind of played out that exact same way in this game against the Pacers. They just absolutely dominated them on the points off turnovers front. RJ Barrett was a big part of that. I thought RJ was bought in defensively, but also was pushing it in transition more often. Had some nice passes to Scottie Barnes. A couple of those threes that he made were assisted by RJ. And so RJ himself had a really great game. The two-man connection between him and Scottie is developing. Post-game, he said, it looks good, doesn't it? And it does. It does look good, folks. And so you have Scottie, who is figuring out his game. There was so much conversation about his three-point shots and his process and what that means for the Raptors. And ultimately, this is my opinion on it. And me and Samson have talked about this on the mailbag and whatnot, but this is sort of my fleshed out thought on it. I think in the long run, you want Scottie to be what he wants to be. And I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but just bear with me for a second. In the end, Scottie will want to be the type of player that he aspires to be, right? You can't pigeonhole a player like that, a star like that, to try to force them into becoming something that they don't want to be. And so if Scottie wants to take threes, and if Scottie believes, and the Raptors coaching staff admittedly believes that that is a major part of his development, then he should be taking threes. And he should be taking them in abundance. That being said, I do think that it's important for him to also refine and fine-tune his pick-and-roll game, his driving game, the bully ball game that he has in the post. All of those areas need to be better, quite frankly. But I think there's a world in which he can balance both. And he's been playing great basketball, man. Outside of the whole three-point shooting woes and the efficiency woes, admittedly, it hasn't been the most efficient. There have been turnovers, and so the turnovers have been an issue. He had 7 turnovers tonight, 5 for RJ Barrett. That continues to be an issue for a young team with young playmakers who are trying to figure things out on the offensive end. But that being said, I enjoy the process that Scottie Barnes is doing offensively. It's clear as day how he impacts this team on the defensive end. The length, the size, the communication ability on the back line, all of that is there from Scottie. All defense level defender, in my opinion, when he's engaged and when he's buying in. The offensive side of the ball is this evolving process. And I like to look at player development like Play-Doh, right? Not Play-Doh like the philosopher. Play-Doh is in like the little thing that you could play with as a kid, right? And you mold it and you make it into whatever you want it to be. And so a player with the skill sets that Scottie Barnes has can kind of be shaped into however he would like to become. Barring it isn't stretched too thin or isn't kind of ruined on one side or whatnot. I don't know. I'm trying to stretch this Play-Doh theory out too much, but honestly, it is how development works. You're kind of given this kind of prospect to mold into who they can be, and it comes with these predisposed kind of skill sets and things that they can do, like Scottie's playmaking, like the bully ball, like the physicality. And then you start to figure out what that works, how they can kind of work together into making a star-level player. I think ultimately in today's NBA, the three-point shot is really important. Being able to settle into mid-range shots is actually an important skill that I think Scottie needs to develop because it's such a crucial counter to the bully ball driving stuff that he's great at. So when teams start to build a wall, if we think about Giannis Antetokounmpo, when teams start to build a wall around him to not let him get into the paint, he has to be able to settle into mid-range looks. We're seeing Giannis do that now. Giannis is actually hitting his mid-range jump shots at a career level. I think it's like 45% on long mid-range jump shots for Giannis, and it's because he's had to develop that over time. And so I actually don't hate that Scottie is working on that side of his game right now as a guy as young as he is, because I think it'll pay off in the long run, because I know that driving ability, while it needs to be fine-tuned, while it needs to be crafted, and while he needs to get reps at it, he will eventually get reps at those too. And we saw it tonight. Like, the driving game was really good, as was the shooting. So there is a world in which they can coexist, in my opinion. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. I don't think the Raptors coaching staff is approaching it as one or the other. I think it's a very holistic approach to see how can Scottie Barnes be the best possible version of himself. And we're okay seeing how long that takes. That's the inevitable conclusion that you come to when you watch Scottie Barnes over the last little bit. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is this idea of tanking. Unfortunately, it seems like the Raptors will be too good to tank. Now, tank is whatever your definition of that is. As we know, teams that make the play-in, 2 of them still end up in the lottery. The Atlanta Hawks last year made the play-in, lost in the play-in, ended up with the lottery, ended up with the number 1 overall pick. Does that happen all the time? No, it does not happen all the time. But it's an outcome. It's a possibility. And so I think the Raptors is currently constructed, particularly with Scottie Barnes healthy, and particularly with Jakob Poeltl. Those are the 2, and RJ Barrett. Those 3 are sort of the most important, in my opinion, in terms of the win-loss column for this Raptors team. Those 3, with those guys healthy, it's tough for them to tank. It's more likely for them to win enough to be in the play-in, especially with the current state of the Eastern Conference. And, ultimately, the team has not played enough together. Starting lineup of Jakob, RJ, Scottie, Grady, IQ has only played less than 50 minutes together. They've played half a basketball together, And so I think it's important for them to get those reps. I think it's important for them to get that experience. I think it's important for Scottie to learn what it means to play-in basketball and be the number 1 guy on a play-in team or be the number 1 guy on a potential playoff team. I think that matters in the long run. I think getting that rep. Same thing with RJ, same thing with IQ, because you only know so much about these players until they play in the playoffs. RJ and IQ have had their moments to be on playoff teams, not much. New York was just kind of figuring out what they were going to be as a playoff team while RJ and IQ were there. And so they haven't had tons of opportunity. We haven't seen them as much. Jakob has experience as a playoff player. We know the warts and what, the free throw shooting and whatnot, and how that kind of deals with him being the center for the team. Scottie has had some opportunity that Philly series and the Chicago playing game, but we really, again, haven't seen too much of Scottie in postseason basketball. So I just think it would be important for this team to get reps, to get experience. And for what it's worth, they've played some really close games this year. They've played competitive basketball this year, and they've been forced into a lot of moments where they've had to figure out schematically how they wanted to win games. They haven't been on the winning side of those. But I think those were important too, to inevitably kind of get notches on their belt for playoff experience. Yeah, it would be nice to add a top-tier talent to this group. It would be sick to add Cooper Flagg or Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey or Nolan Traore or any of the other top names that people will bring up and mention. VJ Edgecombe, come on Maluak. It would be sick. No question. And perhaps it's still in the cards for the Toronto Raptors. But in my opinion, I do believe in basketball gods. I think there is a version of an ethical tank that could make both the people who want to tank and both the people who want to watch fun basketball be happy about things. It's been a fun season. It has been a fun season to cover the Toronto Raptors. And that has been through tons of injuries, few ugly losses, few tough losses. It has still been so much fun to watch this team develop, with a bunch of rookies playing their butts off, with Davion and Ochai developing, with Grady blossoming, and Scottie and RJ figuring things out on their own ends, and Jakob Poeltl. It's been a lot of fun. And I hope you're having fun watching it too. So, ladies and gentlemen, as always, subscribe to the Raptors Republic channel. We are so damn close to 12,000 subscribers. Help us get there, please, by the end of the year. Would appreciate you guys as always. Thank you very much. We'll see you guys later. Take care.